Good evening. On Tuesday, April the 3rd, voters will go to the polls to decide who will represent them as Stillwater mayor. In preparation for this election, the Stillwater League of Women Voters are pleased to present this evening's Candidates Forum. I'm tonight's moderator, Gladine Allred, with the Stillwater League of Women Voters. And this evening, we will be hearing from the candidates for Mayor of Stillwater. And now, before I describe the format and the rules, I will introduce the candidates. They are Kevin Clark and Will Joyce. To begin the forum, each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to make an opening statement. Candidates will be asked questions prepared by the Stillwater League of Women Voters and by members of the audience, and also by you, the viewers. And there is a number that you may now call or text your questions when the time comes. And the number is 405-762-6613. 405-762-6613. You may call in or text your questions. And a league member will take the question and bring it to the moderator, so we'll ask your question. So you're included too. Only written questions will be accepted. No verbal questions will be accepted. So if you have a question here in the audience, raise your hand and a league member will provide you with paper and pencil. And questions are screened for duplication only. Questions should address the issues. No personal criticism will be accepted. And both candidates may respond to each question. Answers will be limited to 90 seconds. A timer will raise a sign when you have 1 minute and 30 seconds left, and when they hold up a stop sign, you must stop. Now, please hold all audience applause or verbal approval until the end of the forum. And before we start tonight's forum, we would like to ask all spectators to turn off your phone. Okay. And I've turned mine off.
Yeah,
okay.
double checking.
Okay. The candidates have drawn for opening positions. The person who speaks first in the opening will speak last in the closing. So we will hear first from Kevin Clark.
Gladine, thank you, and thanks to the Stillwater League of Women Voters for sponsoring this event tonight. This is the 5th of 6 face-to-face events we have scheduled during this campaign, and it's been an honor and a privilege to meet with Will. We are friends. We're in the same Rotary Club, and I think we respect each other. I know I respect him, and it's been good to engage in this dialogue. So thanks again for this opportunity. A question I get a lot is, why in the world are you running for mayor of Stillwater? And this is a journey that really started for me 3 years ago. At that time, I was in the middle of a term serving on the Board of Education, and I had 4 different people approach me and ask me to consider running for mayor then. And at that time, it wasn't the right time. I was serving on the board. I felt like I needed to honor and complete my commitment to the school board, and so I just opted not to at that time. But it had been on my mind since then. And so I finished my service on the board February of last year, took a couple months off, and then started attending city council meetings. And I've been attending all but one really meeting and part of 2 other meetings since April of last year for a couple of reasons. Number one, I just wanted to decide, do I really want to be on the city council or not? And number 2, if I'm going to be on the council, I need to understand the issues that have been in front of the council so that if and when I'm elected mayor, I'm in a position to hit the streets running and have a smoother transition than I might otherwise, didn't want to have the deer in the headlights look. So that's basically why I've been doing it. The things I've been talking about in the campaign are long-term planning. I'd like to see us return to a time when we're looking 30 and 40 years down the road and trying to build a better Stillwater for our children and our grandchildren. And the Caw Pipeline is an example of that, where we had a drought a few years ago, and we had plenty of water, and we had so much water we could supply it to Lone Chimney. And that was truly revolutionary for our city, and it positioned us for the future, for future growth, and even for growth continuing. We'll talk more about other issues as we go into this dialogue, and thanks again for the opportunity to be here today.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Clark. Now, Mr. Joyce.
Thank you, Gladine. It's great to be here. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting this forum on. As Kevin said, we've done this a few times here over the last couple of weeks, and they have been very productive and friendly, and I expect nothing less tonight. I'm running for mayor because I think it's time for action in Stillwater. I think in my time here, 29 years as a resident of Stillwater and 2 years as a city councilor, the thing I've seen the most in Stillwater, the thing I hear the most, is that Stillwater seems to be stuck. There's a few issues that we've talked about a lot in this town and that we've just not done anything about. I feel like it's time for Stillwater to start moving forward. We have a lot of great assets in this town. We have a lot of great opportunities in this town, and we need to take advantage of them. And that's really the core reason that I decided to run for mayor at this point. For those of you who don't know me, I am from Stillwater originally. I grew up here, married my high school sweetheart, who's also a local Stillwater girl. And we moved to St. Louis in 2001 after we graduated from college at OSU. And we spent 10 years there, really enjoyed being somewhere else and getting out of town and kind of experiencing another place to live. But when we had our kids, it was time for us to move home. So we brought our 4 kids back in 2011 and have been involved here ever since, very active and involved in Stillwater, and have taken a very careful look at what Stillwater needs to be doing and why we're here. Why did we bring 4 kids back to Stillwater and put them in schools here? So I joined the city council 2 years ago, was elected to that post in April of 2016, and really have spent that time again sort of seeing those things in Stillwater from a development perspective, from a community activity perspective, that feels like it's time for a change, a time for a move forward. Stillwater is great. We love it here, but I want to see us do more. I want to see us develop Stillwater more. I want to see us take advantage of the opportunities we have. That's why I'm running for mayor, and we'll talk more about those issues as we move forward tonight.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Joyce. And now we will start with a 45-minute segment of questions prepared by the League of Women Voters and the audience here tonight, and you, the viewers. You call in your questions, and again, I'll repeat that number. Well, you can see it there, 405-762-6613. You can text them also. Okay, we will, each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to the questions, and we'll rotate the responses, starting with Kevin Clark. And the first question is, as mayor, what would you like to do to protect and promote affordable housing in Stillwater?
Well, affordable housing is extraordinarily important. So an example I've given several times in the last couple of weeks is that my daughter recently bought a home along with her husband, and they tried to get into 3 houses, couldn't even get in the door because the houses had accepted offers before they even look at them. We don't have a lot of affordable housing in Stillwater, and it's critically important if we're going to attract visitors, or we're going to not visitors, we're going to attract employers and their employees, we have to have homes for those people to live in. So we have to have strong neighborhoods. We have to continue the process of I just drew a complete blank. I'm going to start over. We have to have, I think, opportunities within the Development Services Department to make sure that home builders can build affordable housing. We have to have fee structure that makes that acceptable. We have to have a process in place so that they can be efficient in their building, so they don't have to go back and have the same things revisited over and over. They do something, plans change because they get a different interpretation from an inspector, and that adds cost to any construction project. And so it's important that we have efficient processes and consistency out of our Development Services Department to help those builders build those homes.
Okay, thank you.
So I think we have a supply problem when it comes to housing in Stillwater, and that really shows when it comes to the idea of affordable housing and the ability to buy a house as a young family or as an individual in town at a price that's affordable. That's a difficult thing to find in Stillwater, and it's because we don't have enough housing. It's partly because we aren't building enough residential homes in Stillwater. We have had a shortage of homes, and when you don't have enough, the prices go up. We need to build more residential housing in Stillwater. We also, the other problem that we see with affordable housing in Stillwater is that the university community, the student renters in town, there are certain things they look for, including proximity to campus. There are a lot of older neighborhoods with smaller homes that are close to campus that end up being rented by students instead of being owned or purchased by folks who are looking for an older, smaller home to buy. So there's a couple things we can do. We can increase the overall supply of housing in Stillwater, and we can increase the supply of desirable student housing close to campus, which is one of the things the council has worked on over the last few years, and we have seen increase. That will open up a supply of smaller, older homes that are available at an affordable price. And building more homes in general increases our supply and will help bring affordability to more homes in Stillwater.
Okay, thank you. I think that the next question that I was going to ask, maybe this was addressed because the person says Stillwater has seen the development of many new apartment buildings. Some people see this having a negative effect on existing rental properties. What role, if any, should the city council take in overseeing development of rental properties? And you both may have addressed that. You want to add anything, Kevin?
Sure. Well, one of the things I'll say is that I think we have an oversupply of apartments in Stillwater, but the problem is we're in a free market society. And so if someone wants to come in and build a building, and as long as they have the right to build it on that piece of land, the city can't really say, no, you can't do that. So there's been talk about a 7-story building that now supposedly is going to be a 5-story building if it gets built at all. And I think they've been provided with data that suggests maybe we're overbuilt already. And so I think the city can work with these developers to say, do you really need to do this as opposed to maybe doing affordable housing instead of apartment buildings?
Okay, thank you. Will?
Yeah, so in the question of overbuilt apartments, I think, again, it is a free market economy, and the fact that folks have found a profit to be made in building student housing in Stillwater would reflect to me that there is a market there for those things, and especially it comes down to location and proximity to campus. What we've seen over the years in Stillwater is actually lots of student housing being built on the edges of town, out on North Washington, out on West 51, and so you've actually got, you've got a lot of apartments in Stillwater, but they're not necessarily where students want to rent them. And so bringing those back into the core of the community, bringing more people back into the core community close to campus actually creates less traffic on the roads. It creates less wear and tear on our infrastructure. And so there is a market to bring more housing close to campus. The effect that has on existing rental property, there's definitely an effect. There is. A lot of our rental stock in town is older. Some of it's not in great shape. And if it's being replaced by newer, better options for students, there is definitely going to be an effect on that market, and I think that's part of the free market that we have in our nation, and I think we should let it work.
Okay, thank you. The next question, we have questions about housing. There's concern, but should the city adapt a safe housing code for investment property, including regular inspection, to improve quality and safety of houses in neighborhoods? And we'll begin with you, Kevin.
I've started every time so far. I think it's Will's turn.
I'm happy to start.
We'll begin with you.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a great question. It's actually a question that I asked when I first came on the council, because I do have a concern, given the fact that when I moved back here after being gone 20 years, a lot of the same houses and apartments that I lived in or that my friends lived in when I was in college are still here, and they still look the exact same they did 25 years ago. And there's a concern there around safety. I think I saw Joe Weaver walk in. Joe and I actually talked about that early on because I took his place on the council. And the idea of what can we do to ensure that these places are safe? One of the problems we have with that in Stillwater is the fact that the state actually is not amenable to us doing inspections on our own, on our own from a city perspective. When I lived in St. Louis, we couldn't get our electricity turned on at our new apartment until the city came and inspected it. That's not something, from my understanding, we're even allowed to do in the state of Oklahoma. I would like to see us as a city be more to push a little harder on making sure that the housing we do have available and the housing we put our students in and our kids in and the folks that come here to live, that it is safe and that it is built to high standards. And so I'm absolutely open to looking into that. I think there are some restrictions that we're going to have to deal with, but the city can and should do more to ensure safe housing in Stillwater.
Okay, Kevin, the same question.
All right, I agree with that. I would love to see us in a position where we could have occupancy permits. I don't know that, again, if state law is going to permit that or what restrictions we would have on us, but in my hometown, it was a requirement. If you bought a house or you moved into an apartment or you moved into a rental house, you had to have an occupancy permit to get in, and which required some kind of inspection or required at least certification that certain things have been done. And I think that's appropriate, and it's important. And, you know, we have, in many cases, students who are, 20, 21, 19 years old who don't know the first thing about home safety, who are walking into some of these buildings that are in horrible shape. And we owe it to our students, and we owe it, frankly, to our seniors to make sure that we have affordable and we have safe housing for them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next question, we'll start with you, Kevin. Okay. And this question is, when there are competing interests between businesses, commercial enterprises, and neighborhoods, how will you resolve that?
All right, that sounds like a question that came right out of the League of Women Voters questions that were published. And, that is, I think the Development Services Department is a great place for that dialogue to happen, because they're dealing with the developers, they're dealing with the neighborhoods, and I think it's a great place to deal with working with those. As mayor, I would love to get engaged in those conversations, but you know what? The mayor's job is not a full-time job. And but I would view the mayor or members of the city council as being someone who gets engaged in the process once it's sort of broken down, and there's no place else to go, and somebody needs to get involved in mediating and negotiating. And but the Development Services Department is enforcing code. They're ones who are bringing forward to the City Council, to the Planning Commission, these development plans, and that's the first place for it to go. Now, on the other hand, we need to have strong neighborhoods, and I strongly encourage building bridges between the city and through the neighborhoods. We talked this afternoon about the idea of even many neighborhoods have neighborhood parties, or they have neighborhood annual meetings. I think it's a great place for a city representative, whether it be an employee or whether it be a member of the city council, to go and engage and listen to what they have to say about what's going on in the city.
Okay, thank you. Will?
Yeah, so this question of competing interests between commercial or neighborhood interests is usually one that comes up over land use. Usually comes up over, I have a piece of property and I want to do something business related with it, and it's next to your piece of property where you live, and it's next to your neighborhood. And those kinds of disputes or concerns are very personal to people. And I think we have to recognize that first, that it's more than just a business question for the people involved. And that includes for the business folks who may be trying to do a commercial development. Land use and what's next to our homes is very personal for us. And we have to address it as such. And I think for any kind of personal conflict like that, the absolute first thing we've got to do is encourage communication. We've got to put people together in the room with a plan and a system where they can have this conversation, where they can talk about what they're trying to do, what their goals are for their property, and what their concerns are about what's happening next door, and have open and honest dialogue between the parties. The city can facilitate that, but these are questions of land use from a city council perspective. Are what do the people want to see? How do they want to see land used? And what do the people around that area want to see for their land use? And we have to be, I think, very strong in our desire to see that communication happen and to encourage it to solve those problems.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next question, and we will start with you, Will. Do you support the form-based code as currently revised, or are you in favor of more revisions or completely ending it?
It's a good question. The form-based code area, for those of you who may not know, is an area around campus, the south and east sides of campus, where a few years back the council adopted a different sort of zoning structure, which instead of dictating exactly what use happens where, it has a larger mixed-use sort of a flavor to it. It's been controversial for sure. There are some issues with it that we've tried to solve on the council the last few months, where we've attempted to make it a little cheaper and easier for small developers or small landowners to make changes to their property or to do development on their property, which the form-based code has had some financial constraints. So we've made those changes to the code. I'm in favor of it in general because I do like what it's trying to do in that area is to create a mixed use, a unique neighborhood of stores and restaurants and shops and places to live and a neighborhood, a vibrant neighborhood close to campus where we can attract students, we can attract other folks who want to live close to campus, professors, and have the kind of attraction that's more than just a mall where we're going to go shop. It's a place where people live, where they play, where they eat, and I would love to see it develop that way. So I'm certainly in favor of us continuing to work towards that happening in the form-based code area.
Okay, thank you. Will, Kevin?
I am not a big fan of the form-based code. I think that, as I understand the original intent, it was designed to encourage exactly what he's talking about, mixed use. So if you're building an apartment building, it's going to have retail as part of that. It's going to have business as part of the development. That hasn't been happening. Apartment buildings have been apartment buildings, squeezing in as many apartments as possible. It's created problems for small developers, and yes, the council's tried to address some of that recently, but Norman Nickel described to me a home that was trying to be converted to a duplex, but due to the costs associated with developing their half of the street in front of them, the cost of widening the road, creating a bike lane, widening the sidewalk, it was prohibitive. It was going to add $25,000 or $30,000 to the price that was going to be associated with developing this duplex out of a house. And Norm said, and this is a house that needs to be redeveloped. But I'm not a big fan of the form-based code. I think it should be repealed and go back to standard codes and standard involvement in the Planning Commission and the City Council.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, this is a different type of question, and we are starting with you, Kevin. How will you work to ensure resources for the citizens of Stillwater suffering with mental health issues?
Okay. Well, mental health, we don't really have a city health department that I'm aware of, so I'm not sure how that is going to fit into the city government. We do have a county health department, but I would love to be engaged and have a further dialogue on that topic with whoever asked the question, but I don't see that as a function of our city government. Okay,
thank you. Will?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that we can do from a city perspective. One, the mayor sits on the board with the Stillwater Medical Center. The medical center, I think, provides a lot of services. Mental health services are one of those where we don't see quite as much happening in Stillwater, and we'd like to see more of that brought here. And so being a board member of the hospital, there is some work that could be done there to help encourage more mental health services being brought to Stillwater through Stillwater Medical Center. I think one of the other things that the ways the city get involved is really, unfortunately, the way mental health is dealt with a lot in Oklahoma is through the legal system, through law enforcement. We have a very well-trained police force. I think we as a city have to encourage our officers and our first responders to be very well-trained in dealing with mental health patients to the extent that they might encounter them so that we're not exacerbating situations when we could be helping. I think those are a couple of ways that the city can help deal with that. Those are not solutions. Certainly, law enforcement is not a solution to mental health issues. We need to encourage more treatments to be available and more services to be available through our local health systems. But we can be prepared as a city to handle situations well when they come up.
Okay, thank you. And we'll start the next question with Will. And I think one of our listeners called in this question. What do you plan to do to help downtown to grow and not just be a bunch of bars?
Well, downtown, has come a long way in the last few years. And when I left in 2001 and then came back in 2011, there was a huge change while we were gone. And a lot of that, I think, is attributable to the Business Improvement District. There was an assessment district where local property owners in the area came together and contributed money to help beautify downtown, to help support local business downtown. That was, I think, a great thing. I think it's something we should have continued. And while it expired recently, we need to reinstitute it, and we need to provide even more help and even more community investment in downtown. I was just downtown tonight at Balanced Coffee, and it's a wonderful little place that folks have gone and invested a lot of their time and energy into doing. And there's a lot of that happening downtown, but we as a community have to come alongside, right? We can't just say, oh, if somebody's going to open a business, they'll open a business and we'll let them, and that'll be great. What has helped downtown is the community coming alongside, encouraging, investing, and we need to continue doing that. That's one of the things we're working on right now with a very large strategic project to bring more than $30 million to the downtown area in reinvestment help and support.
Okay, Kevin.
All right, I was a big fan of the Business Improvement District, and I was disappointed that it was allowed to expire without being replaced. The reason that was given at the time, as I understand it, is we're going to solve this tax increment finance district thing, the TIF, and then once that's figured out, we'll go back to bid and deal with that. But I think it should have been seamlessly rolled right into bid 2. The Business Improvement District provided the opportunity to do facade improvements. It provided the opportunity to help business get kicked up and get started downtown. It was it was the driver for the recovery of downtown. It was the driver. And it never should have been allowed to expire. So what I would propose is, as quickly as possible after I become mayor, is we get it back up and running and make sure that the bid is more self-governing, because they didn't have a lot of independent control over how they used their money, and I think they should have more direct control over those decision-making processes.
Okay, thank you. The next question, and we'll start with you, Kevin. What role should the City of Stillwater play in the management of recreational sports in Stillwater, and how will you expand recreational sports in Stillwater? It's kind of a two-part.
Okay. Recreational sports are important. I mean, my kids grew up playing sports, and having organized sports prior to getting to that level at the junior high school and the middle school provides students with, number one, discipline, working in a team environment, all the things you would expect from sports. And so it's important that we have that. Today, we have a number of external entities that are managing those processes for us. And you hear different ideas about how successful and how well that's working. I think the City Council should review that. We should see, are those partnerships working appropriately? If they are, great. If they're not, then let's figure out what we need to do to fix them. Because we have to provide those services. Most growing communities, and if you're not growing, you're dying, most growing communities have youth opportunities, and we need to have more of that in Stillwater.
Okay, thank you. Will?
Yeah, so I've got 4 kids, and pretty much all of them have been involved in youth activities, including sports here in Stillwater. SASA, Stillwater Area Sports Association, was created a few years back, and the city sort of turned over recreational sporting activities to them, a private nonprofit, using city facilities. And I think they've really done a great job in a lot of ways over the last few years. I sat down with Carolyn at the SAS office the other day and talked about what they need to continue to expand what they're able to do. And we talked about the concept of really collaborating even more in youth sports. What we see now is there's a few specialty sports that end up kind of running on their own. Soccer is one of them. Football does that. We've got a few kind of overlapping offerings from the YMCA and from SASA and from other leagues in town. What we'd really like to see is to help those teams, those leagues and those groups collaborate even more and use SASA as the kind of entity that can help make sure all of the fields are being used. We're getting as much efficiency as we can out of the parks and fields that we have. So I think there's definitely room for that efficiency to grow, and more we can do to make sure that all of the leagues and all the sports have the resources they need, and I think SASA can be a large part of that.
Okay, thank you. The next question, and we began with you, Will. How do you plan to bring big business to Stillwater that pays well?
Well, I'm going to ask them really nicely. No, we right now we have bringing big businesses to town. I mean, recruiting existing business to a town is something that I think we talk about a lot, but is actually a really difficult thing. It's not something that happens a lot of places, and I don't think that we don't want to put all our eggs in the basket of saying, well, all we need to do is find some existing business that wants to open a new factory and we're going to move them here and it's going to be great. We work with the Chamber of Commerce very closely with that. We actually have a service agreement with them to do business recruitment. They do a lot of requests. They answer a lot of requests for proposals where businesses are looking for someplace to relocate. Stillwater is a tough market when it comes to relocating big business, right? Because we're not on a major thoroughfare. We're not on an interstate. We don't have great transportation. Certainly the airport has been a huge boost to those sorts of things. But in terms of rail and that sort of thing, we don't have quite the resources other places do. I'm in favor of continuing to work with the Chamber on expanding those opportunities and finding as many of those opportunities as we can. We probably need to invest more in that in a lot of ways. We need to be more active and engaged when it comes to looking for businesses to relocate. What I want to do more of is build business here, right? Instead of going out and saying, hey, let's get you to come over here, let's take the businesses we've got here, grow them and expand them. Let's take the small businesses that are starting out of the university with students and get them to stay here and grow as well. Let's grow our own businesses in Stillwater.
Okay, thank you. Kevin?
All right. As many of you know, I used to work for a big business in Stillwater. Mercruiser was here for 35 years, and I was there the last 9 years of that. And I think the days of big industrial, heavy industrial companies probably are gone for the reasons Will cited, and that is we're not on a transportation hub. That doesn't mean we can't have big businesses, and it doesn't mean we can't have technology-driven businesses. There's a county in Nevada where 2/3 of the entire county is an industrial park. And that park is built around several concepts. But number one, one of the drivers is it's a technology park. So they have companies there that have servers. They have Tesla doing some manufacturing there. They have a lot of technology-driven companies, and technology companies are good-paying companies. So they're going to bring good-paying jobs to Stillwater if we do that. We have industrial space in town that I think would be perfect for that. We just have to get a plan around how we do that. And part of what they did in Nevada is they identified some strategies. We're going to have easy permitting. We're going to have, if you're pouring concrete at 3 o'clock in the morning, you need an inspection, we're going to have an inspector there at 3 o'clock in the morning. We're going to streamline things, make it easy, make it fast, and back to what I said earlier about making sure that it's easy to do construction, it's easy to do projects. It's that on steroids in this county in Nevada. And that is a model I think would suit us well.
Okay, thank you. The next question, and we'll begin with you. How do you intend to use Stillwater's comprehensive plan when making decisions related to development?
Well, that's a great question. I'm glad whoever asked that. We had a similar question at Kiwanis today, and you know, the comprehensive plan is a living document. It certainly has to be updated, and as we see changes in town. I was asked a question today about, was this spot zoning? I said, well, I don't think that necessarily was spot zoning. I think that's better an example of making sure that we have the right zoning in a specific place. And so, but the comprehensive plan is the master key, but it's not the Bible. So there certainly can be changes that can be made on a spot basis, or saying we're going to take this whole area and put a different zoning on it. But it is the guideline for decision making, and that's, I guess, enough of that.
Okay, Will.
Yeah, the comprehensive plan is something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about and trying to work better with in my time on council. And the comprehensive plan is put together by a citizen committee. It's something that gets updated every few years, but it's one of the ways we actually involve citizens in decision making at the city, right? We bring folks in and we talk about what is land use going to look like over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? What should it look like? Where should we be where should we be pushing this kind of business or that kind, or where do we see commerce growing? And we involve the citizens in that. And when we do that, one of the things I think we don't do well is we ask people for their opinions and we don't follow them, right? So when we involve a committee and they come up with a plan, they spend all that time on it, sometimes we just put it on a shelf and we don't look at it again. We need to do that. That comprehensive plan is our community's statement of what they want to see land use look like in Stillwater. It's also the only way that landowners in the area know what might happen next to their house in the next few years, right? We've got to have a consistent use of the way we do comprehensive planning so that people know, if I buy a house here, what's going to come in next door in 5 years, or what is at least the city's thought about what that's going to look like. So we need to be more careful with our strategic plan and our comprehensive plan. We certainly do need to update it, but when we do, we need to take the citizen input that has been given, and we need to follow it. We need to treat it as the document's intended to be, which is a comprehensive plan for land use in our community.
Okay, thank you. The next question I know you have discussed before several times, but perhaps those listening have not heard your answer. What is your plan or idea for Block 34? And we began with you, Will.
Block 34, a very important topic and a very one that's been discussed a lot. I don't personally have a plan for Block 34. What I want to see on Block 34 is a community plan that uses that city-owned, publicly owned block as a catalyst for downtown and the area around it. When I came on council, this had already been discussed for many years, and we've been discussing it since I got here. My idea and my concern about that public block is that what we do with it should have far-reaching effects. We should not treat that block as just the only vacant block downtown, which it is, and just say, well, what can we put on it? Let's try to get as much out of it as we can. Because the positive effect that we can have with that block is then all negated, right? If we just worry about the block by itself. So whatever we do with Block 34 has to be done in conjunction with a much larger, much broader plan. One, like the comprehensive plan or like the core redevelopment plan that the city paid for and got in 2005, which talks about Block 34 as a mostly public use space that would then encourage and catalyze development, sales tax generation around it. So that's what I want to see. I want to see Block 34, it's the effects of it multiplied throughout downtown and not just centered on it. And I want us to talk about it as part of a larger plan and not just about that block.
Okay, thank you, Will. Kevin?
All right, I also do not have a plan for Block 34, despite what some people seem to think. And, it is, I also think it should be a catalyst for driving what happens in downtown. But I'm not a big fan of the current plan. And, but the only time I talk about Block 34 during this campaign is when somebody asks me a question. It's not a driving part of my campaign. The only place you're going to see it on my website is in response to questions that were asked by the league and by the news press. So it's not a passion of mine. But I think that the downtown that the Block 34 should be developed in such a way that it is, yes, a catalyst, but it's driving traffic to other businesses in the downtown area, to restaurants, and to the other retailers downtown. But I don't think the best use of that is primarily using that space for an occasional event. Because if you build basically an event venue, you're only going to have it used when events are in place. I think it should be developed in such a way that it's driving lots of people downtown every single day that are going to the other businesses downtown and are driving sales tax revenues for our city. Every time I come to one of these meetings, city council meetings, I hear all about how we don't have enough sales tax revenue, and sales tax revenues are declining. We have this prime block downtown, and we're going to basically turn it into an event venue with very little sales tax revenue. I think that's the wrong plan.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, we began with you with this question. Do you plan more things for families like Great Wolf or indoor water park? I don't know what Great Wolf.
I'm not sure what Great Wolf is. I'm assuming it's some kind of an indoor water park.
It's a great indoor water park and hotel and have them all over the place.
All right. I do not have specific plans for developing an indoor water park. No. What I do think we need to do is encourage developers to develop things that are going to have that are sustainable and that they can make profits on. Otherwise, why are they going to do it? But Great Wolf is in a location where they can attract a lot of people and they can pay their overhead. That probably isn't going to be Stillwater. Now, on the other hand, maybe we do have some kind of a small water park that is owned by the city, but that is how you're going to pay for that, how you're going to develop that, is problematic in an environment where we have declining sales tax revenues and don't have the ability to even sustain certain services, because the budgeting process is talking about cutting services, and that's a challenge.
Okay. Will?
Yeah, I would love to bring a Great Wolf Lodge to Stillwater. I'm not super optimistic about it right now, but what we need to be doing from an economic development perspective overall, and I think this plays into more family activities and that sort of thing. And again, I've got 4 kids under the age of 12. They've been to Great Wolf Lodge and other places, right? We've taken our business to those places. So it's important to create those kinds of opportunities here in Stillwater to keep our tax money here and to attract tax money from other places. To do that, we've got to create unique attractions in town, unique retail experiences, unique neighborhoods and districts where people from outside of Stillwater say, hey, have you seen that cool thing they're doing in Stillwater? Have you seen that new place where you can go get a cup of coffee and you can go shopping and you can go eat dinner? Around the new Performing Arts Center that the university is building would be a fantastic place to put something like that, so that we have the kind of attraction that's bringing outside money to Stillwater. They're spending it here and they're leaving it here, and that does generate the new sales tax revenue when we start talking about family amenities and what else can we be doing to create family options for people with kids. We've got to create new economic activity in Stillwater to see that kind of thing happen. And to do that, we've got to invest in Stillwater. We've got to as a community, say, there is opportunity in Stillwater that we can take advantage of. We're going to invest in it, and we're going to create new economic life here that will then lead to the kinds of things we want to see.
Okay, thank you. The next question deals with transportation. How do you plan to get better transportation? For example, the person says, for trains or for the handicapped.
Well, transportation on a large scale, when you said, I think you said trains?
That's what the
we do
questioner
have
said.
a rail spur here that the State Department of Transportation owns, and that we've had some trouble with them wanting to keep that up. We really want them to keep that open, so we have the opportunity to use rail traffic. Transportation in town is one of those issues that comes out of the general budget of the city, right? This comes out of our general operating budget, and as we've talked about many, many times, our general operating budget depends almost entirely on sales tax. And so I'll go back to the sales tax question. If we want better transportation options in Stillwater, if we want to improve our streets and our sidewalks and improve the ability of folks with in a wheelchair or on a bike or whatever it is to be able to use our sidewalks and our streets better, we've got to create more revenue to be able to do that. We have plans for it. We have great transportation plans. We've talked about it a lot. We know what we need to do. Now we've got to pay for it. And to do that, again, it requires city investment. It requires us creating the kinds of environments in Stillwater that is keeping people's tax dollars here instead of going and shopping and dining in Oklahoma City. And it's bringing people from Edmond and Oklahoma City and Tulsa to Stillwater. The more we're able to do that, more we're able to operate to create recurring operating revenue, the better options we'll have for transportation in Stillwater.
Okay, thank you. Kevin.
All right. Well, we do have Joe Weaver in the audience. That was mentioned earlier. And he one of the departments he heads is, he's shaking his head at me. One of the departments that he heads is the bus service on campus. And that is really our primary public transportation system in Stillwater. I know it doesn't go down every street. I know it doesn't serve every house. But it is, I think, a blessing in Stillwater that we do have that available to us. And so I want to thank OSU for, that's one of the many ways they give back to our community. How you deal with every house and every street and make sure that every disabled person has a mechanism to get around, I don't know the answer. I know at one time we used to have a shuttle, and that was retired because of budgetary concerns. And I don't see at this point that getting restored because of the budgetary concerns we continue to have. Again, if we can get sales tax revenues up, then you can look at doing things like adding a shuttle again to serve our disabled. But at this time, that's probably not in the near future.
Okay, thank you. This person asked, would you support a city ordinance prohibiting parking on the lawn all over Stillwater? And we'll start with you, Kevin.
Okay, I was sort of under the impression we had an ordinance that said you couldn't park on the lawns, but I don't know that for sure.
Not everywhere.
Not everywhere. All right. Yes, I would support that, I believe. It is, we certainly have street parking available. I'm not sure about every neighborhood and every situation. I know that in the Westwood neighborhood overlay area, there were some rules put in place. I know that some homes have added driveway space, and they've put in, they've accommodated their tenants by doing that. And I think that's appropriate. I don't think we should be parking on the grass in Stillwater.
Okay, thank you. Will, you want to respond to that?
I don't, if the question just being supporting that all over Stillwater, I don't know that I would. I mean, I think that, again, it's a property issue, right? I mean, if it's your land and park on the grass, I don't know that I want to come and tell you can't. Certainly the problem, though, the root of that problem is the fact that in a lot of neighborhoods, including the westward neighborhood where we do have an overlay prohibiting on the grass parking, you have too high a density for the way the neighborhoods were built. And so you end up in a situation where where else are you going to park? In a lot of neighborhoods, you've got cars lined up and down the streets on both sides. You can't see people coming in and out. It's a danger in a lot of these neighborhoods, and it's because we've created too much density in neighborhoods that were just built for small single-family homes. This is a larger problem to solve, to try to reduce that and try to create. There are ordinances around single side of the street parking to try to thin some of that out. I don't know that a blanket ordinance prohibiting parking on the grass is necessarily the answer, but we do need to figure out ways for our neighborhoods to not be overpopulated and create too high a density where we have this problem of where are we going to park. I think I would rather solve the root issue of that and figure out how to reduce that problem and how to pull density out of those neighborhoods. One of those is through the form-based code and the apartments around campus. But yeah, so I don't think parking on the grass as a rule is the answer to that problem. We need to solve it at the root.
Okay, thank you. The next question, define conflict of interest, and what requirements should a conflict of interest ordinance include for City Council and Planning Commission? And we start with you, Will.
Okay, that's a new one. Define conflict of interest. I think, a conflict of interest occurs when you've got someone who's making a decision, I guess in this context, who's making a decision about an issue that they also have a personal interest in, the result of it, right? So if you've got a city councilor who has a personal interest in the result of their decision, there's a conflict there, right? They're not able to make a decision that's in the best interest of the community necessarily because their interests are also maybe opposed to what the community's interests are. There are rules around conflict of interest. There are rules around what we can do as a counselors if something personal is involved and the options around recusal or that sort of thing. We also when we file for office, we have to file a personal interest statement that shows people kind of what our personal interests are to make sure that we're being as transparent as possible. I think that's really important. I think it is very important for us to have a good structure around making sure that we understand what people's interests are and that we're not allowing counselors or planning commission members or other decision makers to make decisions that they may have a personal interest in. I think the rules around that are fairly clear. I don't know that I can point to an example of it being a problem in the recent past, but yeah, I would absolutely support the rules that are in place.
Okay, Kevin.
Okay, that is a great question, and I appreciate whoever asked it, and Will did a great job of answering it. I'll go on to say that, for example, in my personal situation, I'm a financial advisor here in town. So a perfect example would be I can't sell city bonds if I'm the mayor. If I'm not the mayor, I can sell all of them I want. And that's a rule that's put in place not only by my own personal ethics, but also by my employer, that is something I'm not allowed to do. And so some of it comes down to a personal code. Some of it comes down to rules that are set forth by the state. But conflict of interest is exactly what he defined. It is dealing in a situation where you have a personal interest, where you have a reason to profit, where your family members have a reason to profit. It would be if we were to do bonds, my company couldn't be involved in selling those bonds, even doing the offering itself. Okay, and it's well, that's enough.
Okay, thank you. The next question, and we start with you. Explain how you will fund ongoing street repair projects in residential areas.
Okay. I think that there's really two parts. The ongoing part of it is through the sales taxes that are available. And again, we have to grow our sales tax base in order to do that. And there are mechanisms in place. It's part of the budgeting process. There's a designated sales tax for that purpose as well. But beyond that, I believe in order to seed and get this thing moving, because we're so far behind in repairing our streets, I believe we need to have a dedicated bond issue approved by the voters for the purpose of taking a chunk of money and investing it into the streets. So that would, I believe, should be a sales tax bond rather than applied to our property taxes. But I would entertain putting it on property taxes, but I think it should be a sales tax bond so that, number one, our visitors who are driving on our streets get to help us pay for our streets. And the people who live just outside of town who are coming into Walmart and all the other places they go also help us pay for our streets. And so I think that is the mechanism to kickstart a problem that we have with streets throughout our community.
Okay, thank you. Will?
Yeah, street maintenance does come out of our general budget, and that, again, it does depend on our sales tax revenue from a general budget perspective. We have a pavement management program here in Stillwater that regularly evaluates the condition of all of our streets, grades them all individually, and then ranks them, and allows us to do street maintenance on an objective, which one's worst. Let's do the worst one first. And deal with it. Then you can, bring in other factors like maybe there's a water line underneath that needs to be replaced as well, so we'll wait until that's done. It's a great program. It's been very successful over the last few years. We've got great data on our streets now that we didn't have before, and it lets us make better decisions about where to invest the money we have. Currently, the half-cent sales tax that's dedicated to transportation brings in a little over $4 million a year. That's barely enough to keep the streets where they are. So we do need greater sales tax revenue to do that on an ongoing basis. I would be interested in looking at bonds for large, long-term projects. If we're talking about completely replacing a street and doing a 20-some year lifespan replacement of streets that need to be replaced, I'm not in favor of borrowing money to do regular maintenance. It's taking out a mortgage on your house to buy groceries. You got to keep doing it every time. And that I don't think that's a good plan for street maintenance. We need to grow that sales tax base in our town to be able to generate more regular, recurring revenue to make sure we're able to invest what we need to do in streets.
Okay, thank you. I know we're getting close to the time in which you will be making your closing statements. This is really a brief question. Should or are city council ad hoc committees be covered by the open meetings law? And I guess we start with you.
Sure. I don't think that the subcommittees of the City Council are covered by the open meeting law. There's not a quorum of councilors present at those meetings, and so I don't think they are. That's probably a better question for the city attorney. But the council does act in subcommittee sometimes, or doesn't act, but it does do research and have conversations in subcommittee where just one or maybe two councilors might discuss an issue with other people in town, discuss it with staff, be able to get all that information so we're not doing all of that up here at a regular city council meeting. And then they're able to take that information and present it to the full council. All the decisions are made by full council in open meetings. All of the information that was considered is presented to the full council in open meetings. And so I think it can be an effective way for the council to be able to multiply its efforts to use those subcommittees. I don't think they're subject to the Open Meeting Act, but again, that would probably be a better question for the city attorney.
Kevin.
Okay, and yes, most of the committees, in fact, the committees are not required to conform to the Act. Some of our committees have. For example, the TIF committee has posted agendas and had open meetings, and people could publicly come and participate and not participate, but they could watch. The same is true with the Block 34 Task Force. All their agendas have been posted, and people could participate in those or observe those meetings as well. But they're not required under the law to do so. And so I think in a targeted way, certainly we should use those things where there's a public interest particularly. And certainly the council could choose to make any meetings require that. They required it for those other two groups. But it is not a requirement of the Act.
Okay, thank you. I know that we haven't been able to ask all the questions that have been addressed. Some people have called in or written questions about balance between OSU and cooperative, and you did address that somewhat. And there was a call-in question about why our property taxes are higher each year. I don't know that you can address that one, but but we weren't able to answer all your questions. But I'm sure that both of our candidates would talk with you privately. And I think now we will move on to our closing remarks. Each candidate will have up to 3 minutes for closing remarks. And the candidate that responded last on opening was Will Joyce.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity again to be here and for the questions that you all submitted. Again, yes, if you have additional questions, I'd love to speak to you either after the meeting or in another setting if you're watching on TV tonight. I just want to sort of close out, to reiterate the fact that, you know, I am interested in serving on the city council and serving as mayor from the beginning of my service here. I'm interested because I love Stillwater. I'm interested because I want Stillwater to be better. I want us to do more. I love it here in town. I would not choose to live anywhere else. But it's time for us as a community to take the steps forward that we need to take to create the type of community that we want to see. I hear a lot from folks around town that, wouldn't it be nice if we had this? Wouldn't it be nice if we finally finished the Kamioka Trail? Wouldn't it be nice if we had a greater variety of shopping or dining options? I sat at the Senior Activity Center the other day, and surprisingly to me, the most often comment I received was about shopping options in town, was about the ability of folks in town to find the clothes they wanted to buy in Stillwater, not have to drive to Oklahoma City to do it. These are things that we've talked about in this town for a long time. We have had plans on the shelf. We've had task forces and committees and just a number of studies done in Stillwater about what needs to happen. And we've actually got great plans. If you go back and look at the core redevelopment plan, it's great. And if we would have acted on that plan when it was put in place in 2005, we would be in a much better place as a community right now. We would have a unique, attractive retail space in the core of our community that would draw people from outside town and would bring their sales tax dollars here. We don't have that. What we have are strip malls on the edge of town. That's not the future of retail. We've got to change that. We need to pick up those plans. We need to take a look at what we already know needs to be done in Stillwater, and we need to do it. We need to get organized from a community perspective, bring people together, and start acting on the plans we've been talking about in this town forever. I will do that as mayor. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm sitting here tonight. That's why I've been on the council for 2 years, because that's what I want to see happen. This job it's a lot of challenge, but to me, it's worth it if we can make things happen in Stillwater. Thank you.
Thank you. And the candidate that responded first on opening was Kevin Clark.
All right, thank you again for the opportunity to be here tonight. I appreciate the League of Women Voters putting this on for all of our elections. And it's a labor of love, I know, and I appreciate all of you and your service to our community. You know, I left a job that I loved. It was a terrific job in order to stay here. My job moved to Wisconsin, and my boss wanted me back, and I said, you know, this is where my family belongs. It's where we want to be. And so we love Stillwater, and it's a wonderful community. It is a growing community. It's vibrant, and it's exciting, and we love being here. You know, the people of Stillwater are the economic engine that drive our city. They build businesses, they do the jobs. You know, my son's a CNC operator at ASCO, and he's over there cutting metal every day. And those people are the people that drive our economy. I'm so excited to see the growth that we're having in Stillwater. I'm looking forward to seeing more of it. You know, I'm not the most eloquent candidate for mayor, but I am the most experienced public servant. Served 10 years on the Board of Education. During that time, we passed $166 million in bond issues. We built or have plans to build 3 new schools, expand 3 other facilities. We've expanded our athletic facilities. We have built an agriculture education facility and expanded it. And I am someone who knows how to get things done. That is what my reputation is in town. And if you talk to anybody on the school board, anybody who is in our Rotary Club, I get things done. And that's why I'm running for mayor, because I want to see the economic engine growing in our town. I want to see us growing and developing and prospering and building a great community for our children and grandchildren. So elections on April 3rd. Thanks for being here tonight. I ask for your vote.
Okay, thank you very much. And that concludes our candidates forum for this evening. And I want to thank the candidates, Will Joyce and Kevin Clark, and the City of Stillwater for the facilities and for all of you who participated with the questions. And remind you, don't forget to vote on Tuesday, April 3rd, but you can vote early also on Thursday, March the 29th, or Friday, March the 30th. That's in-person absentee voting at Payne County Election Board on the 2nd floor of the County Administration Building on the corner of 6th and Duck in Stillwater. And remember to bring your photo ID. And if you have questions, you can phone the Election Board at 405-747-8350. Or the League of Women Voters website, www.lwv.stillwater.org. Thank you, and good night. You guys are great, so.